3 policemen shot dead, 1 kingpin released, and the army is to blame. Now, is this an honest mistake or a planned job? And for an extra 45 days, Omoyele Sowore will be cooling his heels a little longer with the DSS. The Federal High Court has decided to detain Omoyele Sowore for 45 days in order to investigate him for treason-related charges. Now, I'm Maryann, Okon, and this is Plus Politics. The Nigerian Army has stated that its troops attached to 93 Battalion Tukum, Taraba State, had shot dead 3 policemen and 1 civilian in error after the policemen were mistaken for kidnappers. Now, the police has refuted this claim and have brought some hard questions to the table. More like, where is the rescued kidnapped victim? Especially with the viral video, there are so many questions. We will attempt to answer those questions on this segment. And to help me do the answering, I'm being joined by Segun Sopitan. He's of the ACT Network and he's also a political analyst. It's good to have you join us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And of course, we have Michel Agatise, I beg your pardon. He is also a political analyst. Your name always gives me. It's good to have you join us. So I'll start with you, Segun. You are of the civil society. And I'm not trying in any way to take sides with anybody. But if you have seen that video and if you have seen the police's plea on social media, it also makes you wonder, what would a soldier be doing armed outside the barracks in a society like ours, especially when it's not on an election day, because you know how we do on elections day.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of the reasons why people have always stated their discomfort with the heavy involvement of the military in civil peacekeeping within the country. Their constitutional role is supposed to be to defend the sovereignty of Nigeria against external threats. And you would only deploy them in very extreme cases, you know, internally. For instance, the insurgency in the Northeast, nobody would say, you know, why are the soldiers there? So I think it's within that context that perhaps, if we remember that Taraba State is part of the Northeast, and it's only just recently that the Boko Haram threat has reduced to a certain degree there. So maybe that's the reason they have checkpoints in those places. And then, of course, the
Boko Haram is totally different.
No. And then, you asked the question, so I'm just saying, that context, perhaps that's the only reason why one would see them on the roads. Why do they have checkpoints there? So maybe, you know, the killer herdsmen, banditry and kidnapping. So, okay, granted. But, you know, having said that, this incident has now further justified the reason people are uncomfortable with their role within the civilian populace. Because, as they would always say, you know, soldiers respond with brutal force. That's how they're trained. They're trained to kill. It's you know, the police is trained to maintain law and order. Soldiers are trained to kill. You know, an armed
so hence
offensive
what happened yesterday?
So perhaps we don't know. Of course, with every story there are 2 sides. So we've got to be careful. Even though we all have our theories, I've read all the conspiracy theories out there, and to be honest, it's very, very difficult to speak for the soldiers, to speak for the Nigerian army. It's very difficult. The questions that the police have asked, they do beg answers. They beg answers.
There are also people who have commented on this issue who have said, well, Mr. President is to blame. Oh, we always find a way to bring our leaders into this.
Yeah.
That when he resumed office, the first thing he did was take out the DSS and bring soldiers to Government House, which is never done under a civilian rule. So people are pointing fingers at Mr. President that you brought this upon us. Now, even the people who are supposed to police us have become victims of these guys you brought in. Where do you stand on this?
Well, thank you again. And I think the first thing that we even need to take a step back when we're laying blame on the presidency. From my perspective, the blame that needs to be laid on the presidency as well as all levels of government is the fact that we don't have proper coordination between our security agencies. I'm sorry, it makes no sense at all that the police would be conducting a high-profile mission and the military is unaware chasing after the police. It's not done. It's not done. There should be waves of communication among the police, among the military, they should have their codes, they should have the ways they communicate. Before they get there, they should know that there's a military checkpoint here, and they should have advanced signals saying, we're passing through. These are basic communication things. And I think the real tragedy that this shows is that we have a significant underlying failure in the way that our security agencies communicate. That's the first thing. Now, the second aspect, and touching on what you said, which was very important, is the fact that policing is supposed to be for maintenance of law and order in society, whereas the military has a different function. You don't walk on the streets of the United Kingdom, you don't walk on the streets of France, you don't even walk on the streets of Ghana and see soldiers patrolling the streets. But that's
except
normal.
in Kenya, which I saw.
Yeah, but you have to also look at
it was in the
context.
thick of their elections.
It was in the thick of their elections, one, and the issue they have with Al-Shabaab, and that's actually targeted at Nairobi. So, in order to ensure tourism and all of that, you have to ensure that, look, you have added assistance, and that's a different level, But with the Nigerian situation, it's quite sad. So I think really what the consequence of this should not just be about prosecuting certain soldiers. That's important. It should not also just be about, laying blame at what could have happened or what couldn't. But we need to rethink exactly how do our security agencies work together. If we don't think about this, then we're going to have consistent issues such as this. And it's also shows that there's no proper communication. The fact that the police is having to drag the soldiers, the Nigerian army on Twitter.
My next question, because I was reading through these messages and I had a little banter with my producer, and what kept coming to my mind was, if the police has to go on Twitter to drag the army, then there is no synergy. And for those of us who've been around for quite a while, there's always been this superiority thing between the army and the police. Oh, you are bloody civilians and we are soldiers, our trainings are different. But where we are in terms of security in Nigeria, is this the best time for these kind of cat fight? And I'm not in any way playing down on the lives of these officers that have been, taken from them, but where do we even start to deal with this situation?
Okay, I think taking it on board, and it's really sad that it has to be on social media, and it also shows that there is some pain for the police, because you would only ever come to the social media and start dragging another agency when potentially you have tried to make some communications, you have tried to get answers, and you cannot. That being said, I understand that there is now a joint investigatory commission or committee that has been set up to get to the bottom of this, because the police haven't asked their questions, and the Nigerian army has also put out their own version of events. And having both of that without a proper determination of what actually transpired, we were not there, then we cannot come to a final resolution. But to the point you make about this superiority complex, beyond this, we've had instances in the past where policemen and soldiers would fight on the roads of Lagos. We've had instances where policemen are trying to just ensure law and order. They stop a car that has a military man in there, and all of a sudden you have all the policemen being carried
I think
to the
in 2016, a police station was burned down in Calabar by Navy officials.
Exactly.
So, yes.
And it shows that we have not addressed those important points as to what is the objective of our national security agencies. What are they supposed to be doing? Are they supposed to be maintaining law and order, or is this a superiority cult, that we're trying to advance? And when that understanding is drilled down, not only among the higher echelons, down to your sergeants, down to your, junior officers, then you begin to have some form of synergy and harmony. But when there's already that distrust, as you say, a policeman is driving toward a military checkpoint and already his guard is up, a military man is seeing a police officer come in and already his guard is up, then you cannot really have any concerted solution to the myriad of security issues that we have in this country. I mean, you have herdsmen patrolling the roads, you have Boko Haram, you have kidnappings, you have armed robbers, you have everything, and now we have the people that are supposed to be guarding us, fighting with each other. Like, where exactly are we? And that's the issue that our presidency and the legislature.
I want to go back to the same question I asked him, but let's look at what Frank Mba, some of the issues that Frank Mba raised. He raised a series of questions for the Nigerian army to clarify to Nigerians around, its culpability in the killings of detectives. But I want to quote him. He said, for the police to be releasing statements to the media and coming to Twitter to scream about this shows that they're helpless and not getting the support they need from Mr. President. It's very interesting. So if the police is helpless, does it also show somewhat that they're not necessarily highly placed? I'm looking for the best word. They're not respected in a way, and hence the reason why the defense headquarters is tight-lipped about this.
I mean, this is really, really unfortunate, and I think it's a pointer as to why we have such a terrible security situation in the country today. I mean, if the Nigerian police, who is the primarily responsible for, taking care of most of these issues that we have right now, if they come out to the public to say we're helpless, help us. I mean, it's unheard of. It's ridiculous. I can understand the Nigerian police putting out a press release, to sort of like explain what happened, but then to go beyond the press release and start pretty much a back and forth exchange with the Nigerian army is terrible. It's a horrible signal to Nigerians. It means that we are not safe, and it's
you just spoke my mind, because I'm trying to say, like I said to him, we are dealing with insecurity too much already. The police is stretched thin. Security agents are everywhere dealing with the bandits. Is this the best time for this to be happening? And should we be waiting and still speculating at this time? Should we not be hearing something decisive already? I
think the reason this is happening is, the reason we have all of these hotspots all over the country. It's all over the country. If you do a heat map of Nigeria and security concerns, you'll see it's spread all over. And I think this incident is telling Nigerians exactly why it's happening. And this is why I always say, leave all of the tribal, religious stuff behind you and deal with the problem. This right here, Maryann, is our problem. It's the fact that our security systems have failed. They've totally collapsed, and it didn't just start today. Just like he said, I mean, ordinarily, you're going into a territory to have some sort of an undercover operation. The DSS, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Navy, the Air Force, the Nigerian Police, the National Intelligence Agency, the NSA's office, they are all supposed to have an inter-agency cooperative infrastructure where information is passing all the time. It's obvious that that's not working. I've got a few friends in the security services.
We don't even have it at all.
I think they're there. I know that they're there.
But they're not working.
Absolutely, they're there, but they're not functioning well. Because I've got some friends. I mean, you need to hear what happens in Maiduguri. It's a travesty. So we're saying, and ultimately, unfortunately or fortunately, the buck stops at the president's desk. So the president needs to step in very quickly and deal with this problem from the root. So this event that's just happened is a symptom of a far more fundamental problem, and the president needs to address it. So how? His appointments. For crying out loud, why? Oh, why do we still have the chief security officers, of all of the Nigerian Army and all of those guys are still there? They're still there. They've been there for, it's running up until 5 years now.
Maybe Mr. President is comfortable with those men. Maybe he thinks they're doing a great job. Maybe he's saying it from a position that you don't see.
How can you be comfortable? Maybe he is. In fact, I think he is, because he actually said so. He actually said categorically during the run-up to the elections that, he's got a problem with, he works with people he trusts.
He has a relationship.
Yes, and he trusts these guys. But how can you trust a set of guys that under their watch, your police and your army are killing each other on the streets?
Now, moving back to the police, they started a hashtag. This is to show you how desperate the police is. And
it's embarrassing,
Can we blame them?
It's embarrassing.
Now, Nigerians didn't respond nicely to these hashtags, by the way. I would like to bring up some of those tweets, Nigerians' reactions to the police's hashtag. In fact, most Nigerians made fun of them. Let's take a look at those. This one says, first of all, who gave the distress call to the Nigerian Army headquarters. How come Police NG lost 3 men and others escaped with injury? An arrested kidnapper didn't sustain any single injury with bullets flying around. Provide answers, Nigerian Army. Now, this is a good one. This one said, it's sad that some police officers lost their lives that way and nobody can do anything about it. This is what the police started. They go about killing and extorting innocent civilians. Now karma is visiting them. So these Nigerians are saying, we used to start hashtags to get your attention. This one says, what else can we say again about the lack of coordination and synergy, which you talked about, among our security agencies when soldiers kill policemen unjustly? This unfortunate incident highlights what defenseless citizens face on a daily basis in the hands of these guys. Having seen the video, the army should apologize for calling the fallen police officers kidnappers and court-martial the soldiers. And this one says, Police NG ran to this space, started the campaign, Provide Answers, Nigerian Army, because they felt they needed justice. Who then will give justice to the Nigerians that the Police NG have manhandled and even killed? Now, should both parties, and I'm not going to single out the police because of these tweets, the police, the army, they've not necessarily had great relations with Nigerians. Are there lessons to be learned from this?
Yes, clearly there are. And this is not to take away from the lives of the brave policemen
officers
that have lost their lives. That being said, you know, for the past year and a half, we've had issues with hashtags about SARS. We've had issues with hashtags about Nigerian Army manhandling people. And a lot of times, these issues are just swept under the rug. Once in a while, we hear that, oh, one incident or another incident gets the publicity it requires. We hear that they will do an investigation, but we don't hear follow through about what happens. We are not asking for tokenistic victories by which, you know, one person's issue will then be solved, but we're asking for structural reforms. We're asking for structural reforms that when things like this happen, you know, not only are the people, not only is it the civilians that are out in the media crying about these things, but we also want a situation where the whole infrastructure of state, the police, the army, everyone condemns such behavior. And we see the subsequent, you know, consequence that arises from that condemnation of that behavior. Because that's the only way that you'll signal to the masses that the police are, quote unquote, indeed your friends. And I think that's why also, for many Nigerians, although we sympathize, there's still that hold back, you know, that, look, this might be karma.
Well, there were no holdbacks in this on those tweets.
He's been nice.
He's a diplomat.
He's been nice.
But Shegun, quickly before we go, what lessons do we need to deduce or learn from this experience, and how quick should these lessons be put into practice?
I mean, I think that the fundamental lesson is we've got to face our enemy, our common enemy, together. Now, I say this with all sense of responsibility. Even though we've lampooned and, you know, poo-pooed the infrastructure and the communication and the synergy between the agencies, the truth of the matter is that when these types of things happen, they do happen all across the world. Let's not forget that. It does happen. But usually when it does, there's some sort of dirty thing going on underneath, right? And so if you find that some agency is going somewhere and they didn't inform somebody, or they inform somebody and somebody is pretending not to know, then something underhand.
So you're saying that there might be something fishy about this
Absolutely. It's obvious. I mean, the whole story doesn't add up, right? So now, where am I going with that? I think the fundamental lesson for me is Nigerians need to understand that we've got a common enemy. The enemy is the enemy of you and I. He's the enemy of the police, the enemy of the Nigerian army, he's the enemy of the average, ordinary Nigerian citizen. We need to find out who that enemy is and unite and face that common enemy together. If we don't, that enemy will consume us.
All right, I want to say thank you to you, Shegun Shopita, ACT Network. He's a political analyst, and Michelle Agatisse, he's also a political analyst. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
It's
you
been a great
much.
conversation. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, 45 more days for Showore in DSS custody. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us.